What is up, it's Figure Hunter, and today we're going to do somewhat of a long-term review of the Suunto Race S, but also going to talk about why I think the Suunto Race S is pound for pound within the price segment it lands in, the best, most feature-rich for the cost watch in that sea of $400 watches. So we're talking about why I think the Suunto Race S is actually better than the Coros Pace Pro, the Polar M3, and even the Garmin 265, which is saying a lot. And again, we're not saying it has the most features. We're saying that if you had $1 to spend, and every single dollar you spent had to have value, had to give you something in return, it's the most value-rich watch on the market today. Now, I have been wearing, so let's take a look at it. This is the titanium variant. I would not get the titanium variant. I would not spend the money on it. I would go with the stainless steel all black variant. And we're going to talk about why I think it's great in and of itself, as well as why I think it beats those others in category wise in different aspects. But I've been wearing this for like forever. I wore it for like 3 months to make sure I had it. Like I wore it for like a month on one arm versus the 265. I wore it for 2 months against the Coros Pace Pro, and I've worn it against the Polar M3, and I'll give you the reasons, but let's talk about what I think is great about it and just standalone. What is great about it is the design for $350. For $350, this is a high quality feeling watch. Just, obviously this is the titanium variant, but the stainless steel is just as good. I actually like it maybe a little bit better. I like it because it's all black. I like that better. But the overall design is just high quality for the price point. It's just everything in this price range is plastic. Otherwise, I love that they have the band system. Now your band wouldn't look like this if you got the stainless steel. This is a little bit more premium quality, but it snaps in place so you don't have to go under the loop. I think the design is just off the charts. The operating system, actually amongst operating systems in that category, I think this one operates excellently well. Garmin might have it beat, and we'll talk about like who has got what beat in what area. But I think the operating system works really well. You have your functions down below, your metrics and measures, and your workouts. I feel like they've done a great job with that. Within workouts themselves, I feel like you can see all the data. The data makes sense. You don't have a whole bunch of expansive data pages to add, so that would be a critique. But they also have this thing called Suunto Plus, where you can do Suunto Plus add-ons, and you can add on different like metrics that it might track alongside traditional metrics, and it just pop up as another page. I think that's good. Stupid thing, but notifications and text messages work, number one, and they come through clearly. Number two, you can read them, they're legible, they got a great design, I think they have great fonts, those are personal preferences, but I'll talk about why the other watches don't do those simple things well. I like that it has a morning report. I think morning report's a great summary, even if it's not quite as good as some in the industry, but I like that it tracks naps and adds that to your sleep. And then the other thing that I really think is impressive, and this is probably one of the most impressive things, and we'll look at this on the app itself, is specifically how it tracks your training and provides coaching feedback. So when it comes to training, you can get the traditional training metric, which is showing your short-term load on your body versus the long-term load. And it does a great job. It gives you a fitness score. That's cool. Coros does a similar thing, so it looks very similar, but this is great by itself. It does a great job with that, but then they give you a coaching tab, and it goes through multiple different areas. You look at just overview coaching directives, your training load, your intensity scores or areas you've been for the recent week, the impact on different things, different areas of focus, your recovery score summarized here, and you can see it summarized on the recovery tab, as well as your form score. Negative means that you're pushing your fitness a little bit higher this week than in your average volume across 4 weeks. And then your fitness score. So you can just say like, I want to get my score above 75. You can, you have a measurable thing. They do a great job in that category of training. If it was going to look and be honest about what they do, sort of a meh job in, but it's fine. It's actually, it's competitive because everybody's got to do it. They do a, fine job with tracking HRV overnight. You get a summary. You can see where you stand on the green line. This comes up on the morning report. They do an extra metric, which I think is an okay metric. I don't think it's the best, but it's still better than some out there, called resources, which is like Garmin's body battery. And it tracks your overall how busy, stressful running around your day was, exercise and just life combined, how much is wearing down your internal battery reserves. And I think the battery life is on par with the competitive edge. Where it does not do as well, and this is just being honest about the weaknesses, is it does not do well on the heart rate sensor. The heart rate sensor, but this is in a sea of other watches that don't do well in the heart rate sensor. It does just as fine or just as poorly, just whatever you want to look at it, as the Polar M3 and the Coros Pace Pro, and even similar, maybe a little bit less accurate than the Elevate 4.0 on the Garmin 265. And then the last thing that just sort of irks me, if I was being critical, was like when you go to look at your day and you go to look at your sleep metrics, you go into the sleep metrics and it's just got this big page of stuff. You want to see your sleep score, it's that little tiny quality percentage, and that's not helpful for visually seeing anything, but you can't click on it, you can't do a whole lot, and it's a little bit way too microscopic. So the sleep analysis, I don't like how they do the layout. But overall, having used it, I'm going to tell you why I think it's better than each of these watches in each head-to-head in each of these categories, so to speak. And I'll try to look at the watch alongside sort of talking about these things. I don't have all these watches because I couldn't keep them all. So Race S versus Polar M3. We'll start with the one I think that it probably beats the most cleanly. Race S versus Polar 3. Number one, Race S is 350, Polar M3 is 400. When it comes to the training analysis, it beats it hands down. Now, Polar does use that sort of simple graph where you can see your fitness score and how your weekly is looking relative to past training. But, you know, Suunto goes into all these like deep dive analysis aspects. And then you have the coaching aspect, and that's not really, it's very narrow in Polar's world. The user interface, again, how you interact with the watch, I feel like is better, more functional, and it's more in depth than Polar's user interface. Text notifications on Polar, they just are inconsistent. Something about how Polar's written their software or written their operating system, text messages will come in and then they won't for a period of time, and then you'll get a bunch all at once. Somehow they never fixed that, and text messages work great on the Suunto. Expansiveness, obviously you have the Suunto app add-ons, you know, Suunto Plus, and you can add on those things, and you just got more expansiveness for what you can see, access, and use the watch for, like more just overall fields you can look than Polar's. And then recovery and sleep. So that's where Polar beats them. So Polar has, I think, the most comprehensive sleep analysis combination of autonomic nervous system rejuvenation coupled with your sleep score and sleep analysis, or the score that comes from the analysis. I feel like they do a fantastic job there. And in that category, I'd say they crushed the little Suunto guy. But as far as the body and the casing, I feel like the Suunto Race S feels more high quality. And, you know, you have a unique all throughout the day wellness and recovery called resources, which doesn't exist. There's no like throughout the day. You can see your overall activity on a Polar, but you don't get like a physiological measure. And it's just more in depth. Coaching is fantastic, more in depth on the training side, much, much better and more evolved as a watch and a user interface. It just doesn't quite do the sleep analysis as good because Polar's awesome in that, but all those things combined make for a victory for the Race S over the Polar M3. So why does it beat the Coros Pace Pro? See if I can get the Pace Pro out and not make it look like a video disaster. I don't know. So the Coros Pace Pro, I gotta hold this down, has that little locking metric. See if I can get, okay, good. Now we're looking at it. The Coros Pace Pro, I feel like they do a good job with the training. Let's look through the categories. They're both $350. I cannot believe in my Pace Pro video I said 400. I'm such an idiot. But they're both $350. They equal there. But the Coros Pace Pro is like super plasticky feeling. That it's great, it's super light if you want that, but it's just real plasticky. If you see the video, I dropped not the heaviest data, a piece of plate on the band and it smashed it because it's just more plasticky, and the Suunto is like metal. The coaching on the Suunto is far superior. Some of their training analysis, I would say, is on par with one another, but the coaching on the Suunto Race S is just so much more involved. Notification legibility, I know that's dumb, but hey, you use your watch throughout the day. You're not training all day. You're using it as a watch that brings you notifications from your phone. It's so much better. You can't really read it on the Pace Pro. It's just microscopic text size, and you can't change the text size, and it just looks prettier on all across the board, and it's more legible on the Suunto Race. The user interface, I definitely think the user interface to me is better laid out on the Race S. The mapping's the same. They both have, like the sort of like simple breadcrumb or, like simple maps without, street names and points of interest per se. So they both do that. And the battery, well, back up. The battery on the Pace Pro is better than the battery. I think it's by 1.5 times, so 150% longer. So if you can go 7 days on the Race S or 5 days, you can go 7 to 8 days on the Pace Pro, but it's just 150%. So what I would say is just, I think it beats it because of all those different aspects, because it does the coaching, because it has a really solid body. It has, the training evaluation is going to be the same. Oh, and the Suunto does much better job at your wellness and recovery because of the resources tab, because the resource is just something that, Coros is light on. They have the HRV. They both have the HRV. They both have some sort of like measure of what they think your sleep was in simple terms, but they're both as simple on their sleep evaluation. But resources on the Suunto Race S is something that the Coros doesn't have. So it's just more feature rich and just better at certain things. So that is versus the Coros Pace Pro. And now, how dare I say it beats the Garmin 265. Now, out of the gate, the Garmin 265 is $450. And we'll talk about some of the things that it does better. I'm actually going to talk about how, I'll be honest, the Garmin 265 does kind of everything a little bit better. But the fact that everything you could also access or need is also on the Suunto Race, even if it's not as well polished or excellent, means that you're not lacking any capability. It's just not as great. So we'll talk about the things that the 265 does a little bit better, but I want you to remember in the back of your mind, $450, and that's just the, prices can go down, it can go on sale, but $450. In simple terms, it does better in the metal casing versus plastic casing. So the Suunto Race S in the metal casing obviously beats the plastic casing of the 265 in my opinion. The free maps, even though they're a simple design, Garmin is the industry leader when it comes to maps, but mapping of any kind is not on the 265 and it is on the Race S. So it beats it in mapping because it just doesn't exist. Where does the 265 have definitive victory is with one area is having onboard music storage. And Garmin beats everybody anywhere about this because even though if watch may say it has music storage, if it doesn't do Spotify or Deezer or Amazon Music, it doesn't work, and Garmin is the only one that does that. So what areas does the 265 sort of do better, but is also still sort of the same? Well, resources. Now, so the 265 is Garmin's body battery, which takes into account a culmination of different effects. It's improved body battery. It takes into account more physiological aspects, but you do get the resources, which is the same sort of baseline thing as the Garmin body battery. Garmin just has more layers to how it calculates how your body battery is impacted. Your workout evaluation. The workout evaluation, when you get to the end of your workout, you can see similar specs on the Suunto. It's just not quite as in-depth as what you would get on the Garmin, but you still get what's called a PTE. We can look at it on the phone. Actually, that would probably be the best way to look at it. It's just to see what specs come into play. So when you go into a workout, you're going to see what you see here. You have the PTE, which is your aerobic training effect, and you have recovery time of 12 hours. We'll talk about that in a second, but you have your training stress score, which is like your load. You have your PTE, which is your aerobic training effect. And so it has all the same basic metrics that you would value on a Garmin. I just think Garmin does it prettier and better displayed. But here you have the same numbers, or very much the same numbers for aerobic training effect, for your load score, as well as your recovery time. Garmin just does it better and prettier. And so specifically with recovery time, Garmin is the industry leader when it comes to recovery time, because they take your recovery time into the last hard workout, how you slept, and how your body battery, your culmination of multiple things you're stressed throughout the day. So your recovery time is based on more. But here you at least have recovery time calculated at the end of each workout on the Suunto Race S. The morning report, they both have morning reports. Garmin's is just better. It's just prettier. The expansiveness of the operating system and the platform, Garmin just has more. And Garmin just has more data accessible in general. So those are areas that you're not missing on the Suunto Race S. They're just not as good, or maybe in some areas not quite as elaborate and not quite as pretty displayed. Garmin does those things better, but you're not missing it, and it's $100 cheaper. And you have mapping, and you have a better coaching. So I would say the Race S wins when it comes to training evaluation, to the overall what you get when you go to evaluate your training over periods of time. It just does a better job at about that, and it just does a better job than I would say everybody. So you can see it, like, again, the coaching, the training load, how you have a snapshot of your training across longer periods of time. It's just way more involved than it is with Garmin. So Garmin does a lot of these things better, and there's more features. So you could go with like hill score, you go with endurance testing, you can go with those types of things, and training readiness. I just don't find those to be of core value, and you can get all the core value things on the Suunto Race S. So that's my spectrum review for what I think about the Suunto Race S and why I think it beats, for value, pound for pound per dollar. I think it beats all of the different watches I just mentioned in that sort of $400 category, beats the Polar M3, beats the Coros Pace Pro, and even beats the Garmin 265, because 350 to 450 for the core values, it beats it. So tidbit from my life, because I'm sharing that in all my videos now. The one thing I would share is just the human body is way more capable than you realize. So I've been battling, like I learned I have been without an ACL for a long time, so therefore I have no cartilage in my left knee. I've just worn it out because I've just been without an ACL and things are just moving around. But CrossFit has made the tendons and muscles around it made me able to perform. But what it can't take away is inflammation in my knee. So I'm capable of a whole bunch of different stuff that I wouldn't be had I not done CrossFit, because it just sort of strengthened everything to sort of replace the ACL. But the human body's amazing. What I was gonna say is there's many days when I'll go in and I'll feel achy. And then even as you get 50 plus, the sort of adage is avoid injury. And I am deathly afraid of injury, because if you have injury, you have time off. And when you're over 50, time off means potential permanent muscle decline, where you can't quite get it back, because the longer period of time off, the more atrophy you have in your muscle. As you are older, you can't quite regain that same muscle. So I'm definitely afraid of injury, but I'm also believe in the human body's capability. So there are times when, like, the adage would be like, if you're feeling a tweak in your back and you're going to do deadlifts or back squats under a heavier load, maybe just don't do it. Maybe just back off for that day. But what I have found is that I just need to warm up longer. Like maybe have like 8 sets of warm up and then start the weight, because I have found times where I didn't feel good or I felt achy. Number one, you can get past your achiness because it just happens. Now in CrossFit, you have this ability to be in a classroom setting and you're just working out alongside somebody. And so you don't actually get the opportunity to say, I just feel a little weak. You're like, are you doing 80%? Yeah, I'm doing 80%. I'm gonna try to 80% and blah, 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 blah. You're like pushing each other. And then the workout, the metabolic conditioning part, it's just like 3, 2, 1, and they're going fast, and you're going fast, and you're trying to go fast. We're trying to beat them and trying to not fall behind them. And so you don't think about your pain. But anyway, back to the whole point of the human body being amazing. There's been so many times where I felt achy, I felt like a tweak in my back, I felt a little off, and I just warmed up longer and then went into the actual scheduled lifting at the programming or percentages, and I was able to accomplish all of them. And that day wasn't a day off or a pause day. Obviously, you need rest days, and actually, I've talked about that in other videos, but your body is capable of doing more than you think it can. It just might need more warm up. So don't give up so quickly to put off the stuff that's going to maintain your strength or even push your strength higher. So that's it. That's my tidbit from life. That's why the Suunto Race S is better than the Coros Pace Pro, in my opinion. These are all opinion things. Coros Pace Pro, Polar Vantage M3, as well as the Garmin Forerunner 265. It's a Figure Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.